Hey there, Colleen here, DIYer behind LemonThistle.com, and today I am so excited to talk to you about painting a large space pretty quickly. So this is my mom's townhouse. She moved in here years ago and she had always wanted to paint it. It was a tan color with a tan carpet and just everything was tan. So this year she decided it was time to make some changes. So we pulled up the carpet with her and gave the walls a fresh coat of paint. The new flooring came and got installed, and then we came back in and we painted all of the trim and all of the doors a fresh white. I am amazed at how much bigger it feels and how much lighter and brighter it feels in here. She has a little bit more coming down the pipe. She's ordered some furniture. There's been some delays. So instead of a full before and after style makeover, like you'll usually see on my channel, today I thought that I would show you the before and after painting and give you tons of tips that we have learned just through painting a bunch of different spaces this year. We are using a Wagner Control Pro 130 paint sprayer for this project, as well as the Wagner Flexio 5000 for the railing, and we're using the detail finish for that. Big thank you to Wagner Spray Tech for partnering on this video. I am so glad that we were able to get this painted and to get her furniture that she is going to be using moved back in here before the holidays, and I can't wait to see what it looks like when she gets her furniture, which is delayed, but she's got some new couches coming, she's got rugs that she's eyeing, and it's gonna honestly feel like a whole new space. So this is a pretty big paint job. This is a townhouse and we have the main living area here, which is the kitchen, dining room, living room, with this fireplace here, this stairwell, which is 2 stories. We painted that with the railing. And then we went down the hallway and we painted both bathrooms, both bedrooms, and all the closets. It is a decent sized paint job. Honestly, this is the biggest interior paint job that we have done personally. As you know, we are not professionals, we are totally DIYers, so we had some learning moments along the way, but it was fun to put to the test all of the paint sprayer skills and tips that we've used over this past year on smaller projects on something like this. So I know that there's a little bit of worry or questions when it comes to using a paint sprayer indoors, whether it comes to masking cabinets or railings or trim, things like that, as well as what kind of settings to use and how much time and paint a paint sprayer actually saves you. So we will get into all of that today. Before we get into it, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I would love if you did that below so you miss out on any more DIY or home decor videos. All right, let's get into it.
So here is what my mom's space looked like before. Like I said, she moved in years ago and she moved in the furniture from our family home that we had growing up. So it was definitely time for a refresh. You can see the walls here are tan. The trim is really an almond color and the floors are tan as well. It was just a whole bunch of tan. So the first day that we were here, we moved out furniture and then we pulled out the carpet. My mom and my aunt had already pulled out all of the trim, so we didn't have to worry about removing that before removing the carpet. We took a load to the dump and the next day we were back to chip out subfloor. Now I am so grateful. I missed most of that. I spent the day running around, picking paint colors, picking up paint, getting ready for actually painting. And then that afternoon I masked off the railing here and painted the railing with a trim paint. So we painted the railing before the walls and not the rest of the trim, just because the flooring is gonna go right up to the railing here. It would be a lot more difficult to mask properly and paint it after. You could still definitely do it, but since we had the opportunity to paint it while the flooring was off, we went ahead and did that. So I did 2 coats on the railing and I used the Wagner Flexio 5000 for this with the detail finish nozzle. So the detail finish nozzle is great for projects where you want a really fine finish. It lets a lot less paint out at one time, and so you do move a little bit slower, but it allows you to get really precise coverage and there isn't as much overspray. The trim color that we chose in here is called Minimalistic. It is a white color from Behr, and it's actually the same color that we used to paint our primary bathroom when we renovated it last year. I love this white. While we were waiting for the staircase railing to dry, we went ahead and we patched all of the holes in the drywall in the rest of the home. So I feel like that's a whole nother video in itself, but this is a little bit time consuming, so definitely allow time for it. You need the patches to be totally dry before you can sand them and then paint them. Wiping them with a dry cloth after you have sanded and vacuuming up the dust on the floor will help you have a better experience painting with a paint sprayer. If you don't deal with that dust when you are painting, the air pressure from the paint sprayer is going to blow that dust all over and you will be covered in drywall dust. I have made that mistake when painting my office and I was miserable. So definitely vacuum up that drywall dust. When that was done, we started masking the rest of the room. We left masking the railing for absolutely last, so there were a lot of other spaces to mask since this was a large project, so it did give it a full day and a half to dry. Now, I would typically let it dry a lot longer than that, but we were really on a deadline with the flooring install happening after this weekend. Now, I know that masking is one of the most overwhelming parts of a paint sprayer project, or so I have been told on all your comments on my previous projects. So I wanted to share some different tips for masking, the things that I do that we find make it go a lot faster and easier. So the first is when you're masking ceilings, even though it says you only need to mask about 2 feet of the ceiling, we prefer to mask a little bit further. We use this plastic, and the plastic is 8 feet wide. So instead of cutting it into 2-foot strips, we usually just do a run on either side of the room. And more often than not, that covers the entire ceiling. This is what we use. It is in the masking section, kind of like by the drop cloths in big rolls at the hardware store. When you're putting this up, especially if you're putting it up alone or even with help, honestly, having some pre-torn pieces of tape ready on the wall beside where you will be working will help you put it up a lot easier and quicker without as much frustration. Now, when taping anything where I care about it being a really crisp, clean line, whether it be around the edge of the ceiling before putting up the plastic, around cabinets, around trim, countertops, whatever, I really like to use this trick. It takes a little bit more tape, but it's definitely worth it to get a clean finish without as much stress and without the frustration. I find that it's difficult to manage both taping a straight line and wrangling the plastic to get it spaced however I need to, so I like to focus on my straight tape line first and then add the plastic or the flooring paper second. So you can see us doing that here with the cabinets and with the ceiling as well. If you have a ceiling that has a little bit of paint on it from the previous owners or from your previous paint job and you want to get a nice crisp line, you can actually inset the tape a tiny bit, just like 1/8 of an inch, so that you are leaving a little bit of the ceiling exposed to be painted. And then instead of having that wobbly line that you're touching up where somebody else has gotten paint on the ceiling, you'll have a nice crisp line the entire way around. So after you tape around the ceiling, then we go back and then we tape on the plastic masking. Now, if you run out of plastic around the room, you can go ahead and you can cut strips of paper instead of strips of plastic. I just find that they're easier to handle and to tape up and to keep it really clean. This is the same flooring paper that we used on the floor. Now, if I'm taping trim, I tape the edge right along where the trim meets the wall, and then I leave that tape sticking out instead of pressing it around the front face of the trim. And then you can just press your plastic or your paper onto there so you are not using a second layer of tape on doors and windows. A couple other masking products that I do like to use are different types of painter's tape. So the green tape that I'm using here is a rough surface tape, and it is stickier than a traditional painter's tape. I would be cautious about using it on a ceiling just because it might peel down some of that texture, but it's really great for things like countertops that are more textured and difficult to get the painter's tape to adhere really well to. I use this all the time. I also use this when I'm taping plastic to the original paint line on the ceiling because I find it holds the plastic up better and there's less risk of it falling down in the middle of your paint job. There is also a delicate surface painter's tape that you can use on freshly painted surfaces, which we really should have used around the railing. All right, so I do get asked quite often if you can mask in advance, like maybe one weekend and then come back and paint the next weekend, and I would suggest you not do that. We often will mask it one day and then paint the following day. But even then, painting tape is not meant to hold on for a really long time, especially with the weight of masking material. So it will start to fall down. Finished, we have everything masked, including the ceiling and all the windows. some of it in the middle has fallen down overnight, but we really don't need to mask the middle of the ceiling because we're not spraying the middle of the room. Before you go in and paint the next day, make sure that you just kind of run your hand over the tape to make sure that no paint is going to sneak through. Okay, and then when it is time for painting, go ahead and get your paint sprayer set up. So I am using the Wagner Control Pro 130 for this. It is a heavier duty paint sprayer than the Flexio series, but it moves so much faster. Now this is the same paint sprayer that I used when I was painting the interior of a store last year before I painted a mural, and it's the same paint sprayer that I used last year to paint the exterior of a house, a stucco house. I will link both of those projects below. I have never actually used it indoors in a space that has lots of door openings and small areas. So while it's fantastic because it goes super quick, it does let out a lot more paint. And so you need to move really quickly. And that was definitely a learning experience for me in places like the hallway where you have all of those doorways and you've got to kind of work around them really quickly and smoothly without letting too much paint out, which might cause drips. So I'm going to give you some tips that I've learned just from working in a space like this. But this paint sprayer is so efficient. It gives such a beautiful, smooth finish. But if you have only ever used a paint sprayer like the Flexio or other kind of plug in with the tank in your handheld gun paint sprayers, you are going to find that this takes a little bit of adjusting because there is no controls over letting more or less paint out. You just need to move quickly. You can turn the direction that it sprays from horizontal to vertical, but it really just comes down to how smooth and quick and even you move. That said, let's talk about how awesome this is. You can dump a whole can of paint into this paint sprayer and get spraying right away. And it takes, honestly, less than 5 minutes to paint an entire room because the room is already masked. You move so quickly. So I painted the kitchen in about 3 minutes. I did a time lapse and it was foolish to do a time lapse because it honestly moves so quick that you can barely see me doing it. This was amazing when painting the stairway. Because the hose is so long on this one, you can leave the paint sprayer on the ground and you're not lugging the weight of the paint in your handheld sprayer up the ladder to reach out and spray. So it was so easy to get perfectly smooth coverage even at the top of that ladder, even in those corners. So impressed here. Honestly, this paint sprayer saved me on this 2-story stairway. Very happy with how that went. The difference going between the Flexio detail nozzle, which moves so much slower and lets out so much less paint but gives you that really fine finish, to this, which lays it on pretty thick but beautifully and super quick, is just wild. When I switched back to do the doors and the trim after this paint had dried and after the flooring was installed, I mean, it was hard to move that slow again. So if you are doing a large space like this was the entire interior of a house. Again, this was several rooms and 2-story heights, like the flooring was out, so getting it all done quickly was really beneficial for us. I definitely recommend a paint sprayer like this. If you are doing one room at a time or a smaller space, or you want to be able to move a little bit slower and be a little bit more in control, if using a paint sprayer is new to you, then I definitely recommend something like the Flexio series, especially since you can switch to that detail nozzle if you are doing smaller furniture-like projects. Okay, I want to talk about how much paint we saved while spraying this house. So again, this is a living room, dining room, kitchen, double-story staircase, 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, 4 closets. This is like the full townhouse. For this space, we used 5 cans of paint, which is significantly less than we would have used if we were rolling. If we were rolling, we definitely would have used about 2 cans of paint per bedroom, and then several more in the main area of the house. And we were able to paint the entire space, all of the walls in these spaces that I've talked about, in just 2 days. We masked the day before that, and the day before that we did the railing, but the walls themselves were only 2 days. And we weren't there for full days those days either. A lot of that was dry time. If you want to paint a large space quickly, this is definitely the way to go. The amount of rolling and cutting in that we would have been doing with a paintbrush and a roller, I mean, this really did save us so much time, and it saved us a ton of product as well. Unmasking it all to see how much brighter and fresher and just more finished it looks was so satisfying. The paint color that we used for the walls is called Whitewash Oak from Behr. It's a beautiful gray color that has a little bit of warmer undertones so that it doesn't feel so cold like a blue-gray. So after the walls were dry and we unmasked, we painted the doors, installed the trim, and painted the trim, and we did get some help at this stage, which was really nice, so we were able to get her all moved back in before the holidays. I did mention at the beginning of the video that she's ordered some new furniture, so it is looking a little bit sparse in here while we are waiting on shipping delays. This is the before. Again, you can see tan everything, and this is the after. It is so much brighter in here and so much fresher. I'm definitely in love with how the paint transforms the space. And if you have any questions about working with a paint sprayer on interiors, let me know and I will link other paint sprayer videos that I have for you below.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any more DIY or home decor videos. Big thank you again to Wagner Spray Tech for partnering on this video. We'll see you next time.